Hello, everyone. Welcome to this fifth episode of The Invisible. On this occasion, I have the pleasure of sharing with a very special guest. He is Venezuelan, well known in his country, and is currently residing in Spain. He is dedicated to tarot reading, but he is mainly known as a medium for his mediumship. With him, we will talk about what the afterlife is like, perhaps what life is like in the afterlife, his experience as a medium, the good and bad aspects of mediumship and being a medium. In short, an entertaining conversation that I hope you enjoy over the next 50 minutes. With you, Bhagavan Vásquez. Hello, Bhagavan. First of all, I want to thank you for accepting the invitation to this fifth episode of The Invisible, and I hope you enjoy this interview. Let's hope we can share pleasantly and contribute in some way to the people who will be watching this video. It's a pleasure to be here, Bhagavan.
No, thank you. Thank you, Esteban, and thanks to everyone watching us. Because, well, for me, it's always an honor to share with new people, especially. It's nice because sometimes I, as a medium, have learned that sometimes you get trapped in your own concept of how you perceive the world, and when you meet other mediums, well, you give yourself the chance to realize or perceive that there are other ways to see it too. Each one perceives it differently. And, well, for me, it's an honor to be here in your home because this really is your home. These are the new ways to visit people in their homes, in their offices. So thank you.
No, nothing to thank for, Bhagavan. The pleasure is mine. Bhagavan, I naturally understand that you had a previous life, right? Before becoming a medium? As far as I know, and from what you told me at some point, you studied something like what in Chile would be called hotel management. And well, tell us a bit about what happened in this previous life, let's say, before becoming a medium, and how you came to be a medium, how you suddenly dared to tell people to go public and say, I'm a medium, and take on that role and become a public figure.
Well, really, I will always say this. I owe it to my parents because my parents were the ones who realized my ability. They noticed what I could perceive because, well, from a very young age, they told me that I saw things, or they were the ones who allowed me to know that I saw people or heard things that not everyone was hearing. They are the ones who took me to a parapsychology institute in Venezuela. I am Venezuelan. For those who don't know, I am Venezuelan. And my father is the founder of the System of Youth and Children's Orchestras in Venezuela. My mother has a degree in performing arts. They belong to the artistic world. They had nothing to do with this spiritual world. And well, they were the ones who realized that something was really not right. That was kind of strange and a bit odd. Since I was a child, I'm talking about 5, 6, 7 years old, maybe a little younger. And they took me at 8 years old to a parapsychology institute that used to be in Venezuela. There, I was seen by psychologists, psychiatrists, neurologists. That's where they studied me, even for 3 years. The brain waves, they tried to see how it works. That's where I found out that my brain worked differently from the common brain because it emitted completely different waves that allowed me to perceive things that perhaps normally our brain or the common brain does not perceive. And well, it was like a world. Obviously, my parents did it because I first went to an educational psychologist. I communicated to the educational psychologist with a brother because I told him the educational psychologist, it was a woman. I told her that I saw people, and she took it and said to me, you talk to deceased people with I said angels. And she said, you talk to angels, I talk to ET. And I said to her, well, I don't know if you talk to ET, but there's a person here. And I started to describe him to her. There's a man here who is saying to me, Lily, forgive me. And she took it and started to cry. When I said, Lily, forgive me, she started to cry a lot. I was 8 years old at that time. And well, somehow she was the one who, seeing what I was doing, told my parents, he needs to go to a specialized center for this. because what he did to me, I mean, what he told me, no one else had told me. And well, that's where, well, this story really begins, because after 3 years of being studied, when I was 8 years old, my mom realized that I wasn't, that here they were going to treat me like a lab rat. And they decided simply to take me out of there and remove me from all those studies and just let me lead a normal life. But since they were Catholics, they asked my family, my family asked me not to say anything, that no matter what I saw or felt, I shouldn't say anything, because I would be judged, because I would be treated as the odd one, as the stranger. And well, let's say that I've always been very outgoing. I mean, I have never been a shy person. I've never had a self-esteem issue that would prevent me from interacting. So even though my parents didn't know, I shared what I felt. So in school, I was the weird friend who saw ghosts. And obviously, my little friends knew that sometimes I would tell them things. I would scare them sometimes. But that stayed between my friends and me. And after that, one teacher found out, a teacher from my class. I studied at a school that was almost like a semi-boarding school, because I would start at 7 in the morning and finish at 6 in the evening. And somehow they saw me there. I was talking with the teacher. The teacher was very surprised because I informed her about her father who had passed away. And let's say that this was the first contact I had with a person that I could read. I was 9 years old at that time, right? And somehow she was one of those who told me, because when I connected her with her father, it was a story where I was in class and her father started talking to me, but we were all taking a test and she thought I was cheating. And it turns out that when I was punished, they kept me in detention, took away my recess, or didn't let me go out during the break. And then she entered the classroom, and that's when she sat down, she told me, you have to think a lot about what you did, because you were cheating in class, you were bothering your classmates, and on top of that, you deny it. And at that moment, I heard a voice that told me to tell my little flower to behave well. And I didn't want to say anything. And the man told me again, if you want to get out of here, tell my little flower to behave well. And I swear to you, Esteban, that I didn't know what to do. And what I did, I started to cry. She comes up to me and says, why are you crying? I tell her, because there's a man here who's talking to me and telling me to tell the little flower to behave well. Esteban, that woman started crying in such a way. And I cried even more because, folks, I was only 9 years old. I mean, I had no idea. I thought I was doing something wrong. And what I'm getting at with the story is that she's the one who tells me when I finished telling her what I was feeling, because she interrogated me. Don't think that it ended with me just sending a message and that's it. She said to me, and what does it tell you? The father had gone out of his way. She was the only one who had seen what I had done. Let's say I thought I was doing something wrong, and she tells me, never be afraid of what you do, because you are going to help many people. She was the first person to tell me that. Over time, I started to, my friends began to find out, the parents of my friends. So they would invite me to their houses, and it was like for me to do sessions. But it was all very small committee. I mean, only people who knew me. Until one day, I was already in university. I was studying hospitality and service management, which is like being a hotel manager. And well, let's say I went to a center I was sent on an internship to a healing center called Hoffman Clinic, and there were many therapists there. Esteban, many. In Venezuela, that is a clinic located in a place called Valencia, which is called Aguirre, in Valencia, in Carabobo. And I remember that there were, the director of the center knew me because he knew my family. And I arrived at that place, and I saw that everyone was reading tarot cards, using pendulums, and doing Reiki. So of course it was very strange. And a Reiki practitioner was doing Reiki on me and told me, you have a gift and you need to learn to use that gift, because you're like a funnel that receives information and isn't doing its job. So I said to her, but what do you want? For me to go around the world telling people what I see wherever I go? And she told me, well, you should start here. And that made me start talking to people. But at the clinic, a friend who is a journalist, at that time he wasn't very famous. He was a friend who was a journalist, and he started to see that I was beginning to tell people things. Well, I spent 6 months at that center doing my internship intake.
How old were you at that time?
I was already, without lying, about 18 years old. I was 18 years old.
Ah, perfect.
And I went to that center, and I was there for 6 months because the internships lasted 6 months. I had to arrive, and well, I was going to the hotel part, folks. I wasn't going to do therapy or anything, but well, let's say I started to I listened to the Reiki practitioner, and I began to convey the message to all the guests, to the therapist. Then the director of the center noticed and told me, well, you have a gift, you should use it here. And I started using it, and my journalist friend arrived one day and told me, and he saw me doing what I was doing. He loved it and said, I can write a press release for you to make this known in Merida, in Venezuela. And I thought, well, you're not very famous. And the newspaper where he was going to publish it wasn't very widely read either. And I said, of course. And he went ahead, wrote everything, made some recordings. And when I returned to my city where I was living, which was Merida in Venezuela, everyone knew who I was. You're the guy who sees spirits. And since then, I obviously felt bad because I thought people were going to judge me, because obviously there were people. At that time, there was no Instagram. Instagram was just coming out. There wasn't much Twitter. No, Twitter was famous. Facebook was there. So there were people who made very nasty comments. And I just kept quiet. I kept quiet. I said, I don't care what he published in the press. I'm not going to say anything. But I had a blog at that time, which was the era of blogs, where I started talking about mediums. I started writing, and people began to write to me. It was one day that I logged in, without lying to you, Esteban, and I had about 5,000 messages in the inbox from people asking me for help. And I was saying, what do I do with this? And I started...
But at that time, Vagabond, you weren't doing this professionally.
Not at all. I mean,
just starting, yeah.
I was studying hospitality because my dream was always to be a chef. I studied cooking at the school of a famous chef in Venezuela named Sumito Esteves. And let's say I wasn't focused on any of that. But when I opened that blog and saw the number of people, I accepted a request. A lady was the one who told me, I would like you to see me. I went to her house, I saw her, I read her, and in the end, she also told me, you healed me. You prevented me from taking my own life. And she told me, never stop doing what you do. So of course that made me realize that maybe the hotel industry wasn't for me. Obviously, during the internships, I realized that I didn't want to be in a hotel 24/7, 365 days a year, because I really admire. If there's someone here watching this who works in the hotel industry, I admire people who are hoteliers because you truly need to have a total vocation or a lot of desire or a great need. I mean, I didn't see myself there, and I somehow started to talk with people, to convey to them. Obviously, my life was... There was a very famous TV series called Ghost Whisperer, which was about a girl who talked to spirits, and she had an antique shop. The co-producer is my mediumship mentor, by the way, whose name is James Van Prague. And I felt like Melinda, like the actress from the series, because I was in a small town, and in the small town, I was the one who conveyed messages, and only the people who were referred to me knew me. But it was never, I repeat, something to work on. Now, when My friend saw that his press release was so successful. He put me in touch with other journalists, and they were the ones who took on the task of making me known throughout Venezuela, and suddenly it was the world. Of course, hey, and maybe it would be interesting, really interesting what you're suggesting, how it happens. And each case, basically, I've shared with many media outlets. Each story is generally fascinating, how media outlets start. Your case is also very interesting, but maybe going to something a bit more abstract, which I think people will like or find interesting, is, do you have an impression of what the afterlife is like, what life in the afterlife is like? I bet you, have you perceived it? Have you found it? Has it been shown to you? Have you experienced it through a near-death experience, an astral journey? Or do you have a general idea of what the afterlife should be like? I had a near-death experience at the age of 6. And what I'm going to say will be exclusive because I've never told it before. When I was 6 years old, I fell off a platform. I was on a platform. The platform was about 2 meters high, 2 meters and something. And, well, I was 6 years old. I've always been small, folks. I'm 1 meter 67, so I'm not very tall. Imagine being small, much smaller, than 2 meters and 2 meters 50, almost 3 meters. No, it's quite a lot for me. I fell and got a cranial fracture, internal. And I remember that the whole process of when they took me from the place where I fell to the clinic, I experienced it all from above. I remember seeing everything from above, and I saw it from above because it was like you were watching a movie and they placed the camera from above. I saw my body and saw everything that was happening. I saw my dad crying. I saw my mom arriving from the supermarket and dropping the groceries and hugging me. I saw the doctors, but in one of those moments, everything went dark, and I remember being in a place where there was nothing. At first there was nothing. Everything was like black, and suddenly an immense door appeared, and I crossed that door. And when I crossed that door, there was like a meadow. It was like a park, and everything was beautiful. Everything was too beautiful. And I wanted to stay there. I wanted to be in that place. And I remember that in that place, a lady appeared who was, she was my dad's great-grandmother. And I hadn't met her. And she said to me, "What are you doing here?" She called me by my first name, which is Nisrimha. It's quite a complicated name. And she says to me, "Nisrimha, what are you doing here?" And I say to her, I don't know, I crossed the door. I was just seeing my dad and my mom, but I crossed that door. And she says to me, no, come, give me your hand, because you shouldn't be here right now. And I asked her, "Where am I?" And she said to me, "This is a park that you will know in many years, but not right now." So I took her hand and walked with her, but I turned around and saw people, and I saw people floating in the air. I saw children running, and I said to her, I turned around once and said, "No, but I want to go over there." And she grabbed me by the shoulders and said, "Understand, you don't have to be here right now." And she took me through the door, and the door she takes, it's like she's standing in the door, and she says to me, keep going over there, because here, I will be the day it's your turn, when it's your turn to come here. And when I turned around, I saw a great light. And what I felt was like when you fall. I don't know if you gentlemen have had that sensation of falling out of bed. I felt like I fell, and when I fell, I woke up and I could feel my body. I had a respirator on. My dad was lying on the bed. My mom was at my feet. And I woke up. So obviously, from there, the story goes, the main point is that I was very bad at studying. I didn't know how to read or write, and I didn't know how to add, subtract, or multiply people. Then, to this day, it's not known how, after I left the clinic, I started to write, add, subtract, multiply, everything quickly. And the doctors were the ones who wanted to know what had happened to me. Obviously, my mom, I told her the story as a child, after I left that place, and she told me, "You can't tell this to anyone." and I never told it again until today that I'm telling it publicly. And well, this...
Great. Thanks for the scoop. Notice something interesting, because there are some savants, which is the savant syndrome, right? That are present from birth, but there are also studies that suggest that some savants come from brain injuries. Notice, there are very few, about 50 in the world, the savants, who are people that become engi or are mathematical or musical geniuses, you know? And notice that there's also a very famous medium named John Holland, who greatly enhanced his psychic abilities after a car accident where he hit his head. So,
wow.
There's something interesting.
I swear to you, and I swear to everyone.
Your story.
I mean, I really remember that. Obviously, later I talked to spirits. Yes, as an adult, I've talked to many spirits. I always ask them, maybe I don't know if it's disrespectful or not, but I've asked some what they see. That's where many tell me there's neither a heaven nor a hell. Really, it's a place of light where everything crosses over.
Listen to the question I'm going to ask you. I was just about to ask you that. What do you think? Do you think there's a heaven or a hell or not?
The spirits have taught me that there is no heaven, no hell, no purgatory. I've even learned that purgatory is a mental state, only seen by the soul that believes in it. But, and it's interesting because as they showed it to me, it's like you're the only one watching that movie while everyone else sees you watching the movie. But the place doesn't really exist. It's somewhere that soul decides to be and decides to stay until, well, either the guilt it has or the emotion that's dominating it releases it, or it releases itself from that emotion, right? But no spirit has ever spoken to me about hell, even when people ask me where Hitler goes, for example. Hitler is on a vibrational level in the beyond. He crossed into the light and he is in a vibrational place with souls that vibrate the same as he does. And there could even be a Dalai Lama, and there could be, I mean, anyone who vibrates in that chaos, in that hatred will be there, and they are also given the opportunity to evolve. Because in the end, we are souls that come to this physical plane to learn something that the spirit really wants to experience. Because that is what I have learned in my case, that there is a spirit, a soul, and there is the physical body. And that really the spirit is the one that gives, well, all the lessons it wants to see, because the spirit is the creator that wants to see itself through everyone and everything, right? And it uses the soul body to enter the physical body, because it cannot enter directly to avoid being enveloped by matter. And that's where, in some way, that soul has the opportunity to continue living in the beyond. That's why I as a medium, I don't know about other mediums, but I have learned that what truly reincarnates from us is not us, but our spirit. Because our soul continues to grow in the beyond. And that's why we can communicate with souls.
I mean, I say it the other way around. Who incarnates? I mean, it's the spirit that incarnates. And when it is incarnated, it could be called the soul. You understand? That's how I see it. It's like the soul is like a vehicle for the spirit to be able to incarnate in this plane. Exactly. But deep down, who are we? In essence, we are spirits that have here in this experience something we call a soul.
Totally.
Notice something that came to my mind. It's not that I agree with this. It's just a supposition that could be valid, right? We tend to see people as good or bad here, people who help and people who harm, right? And of course, if we think of Jesus, for example, he is a spirit, right? Who came here to live an experience and help in the progress of consciousness for many people. Isn't that right? Because it shakes things up. In general, avatars have been like that. But for example, what happens when... Couldn't it be that someone like Hitler specifically could have been a spirit on a very unpleasant mission, because it's like ending up looking really bad? But the fact that he plays the role of the villain here helps many people become aware and advance in their process of evolution.
Totally. No,
it's just an idea.
No, and it's not just an idea. At least in my case, the spirits are the ones who tell me there really are no souls, no good or bad people. There are only lessons. We could have chosen as souls to play the role of Hitler or Jeffrey Dahmer, for example. We could have wanted to be him, and no, our soul decided to learn those lessons from another vibrational level. Besides the fact that we have past lives that allow us to, well, not have to choose that scenario. There are souls that decide. There are spirits that decide to incarnate in a soul, to enter a human body and incarnate and play that role, because it's what I tell everyone. The divinity is testing itself. It is looking at itself through everyone. And everyone is elevated consciousnesses and not so elevated consciousnesses. And the consciousnesses that are not so elevated are also rich in knowledge because they allow other souls to evolve as well. I explain it a lot with, for example, wars. Obviously, one sees a war like what is happening right now in Gaza or in Ukraine, and one says, why in the 21st century are these kinds of things going to happen? But it's because they allow you, if you see it from a spiritual side, these events are what allow you to choose again, to choose a different way of doing things, but they have to happen so that you can choose again. If you see a classmate who doesn't study, who doesn't make an effort to learn, who is a bad student, you see him, you can choose to be like him, or you can choose to take him as an example of what not to do. The same thing happens with these villains of history. Really, what these villains of history do is that they are embodying a role. They are souls that embody this role or take on this role to learn something and to teach us something. I always tell them, for example, with Hitler, and people get upset when I use that example, but it's because Hitler has been like the greatest villain in history. There are others, but well, and there are people who aren't even mentioned. But what I'm getting at is that if Hitler hadn't done what he did, human rights wouldn't have existed, and tourism as we know it today, and travel as we know it today wouldn't have existed because people before didn't have a need to move from one country. People lived their miseries, their things in one place. But when the Second World War appears, it's after the Second World War that people managed to take advantage of these planes that were left, where they transported God and everyone to move from one country to another. And that's how tourism as such really begins to be created. In addition, the Great Migration that occurred during the Second World War led to hotels and many other facilities being opened worldwide to accommodate these people. So obviously it was a madman who, regrettably, history has to acknowledge. But when you look at it from a spiritual perspective, it was a soul that was embodying that role. And thanks to that story existing, other things happened, like human rights. Today people have human rights, thanks to what happened in the Second World War because of how difficult it was. So what have I learned? That there are no good or bad people, only souls that are embodying a role and have to evolve from there. The drug addict, the prostitute, the murderer.
There's a phrase in the background that says, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And perhaps on a more like humanity level, also the phenomena that are chaotic or critical on a human level, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger and should help you grow and advance as a collective, right? As humanity. What is the most complicated thing? You see, in accepting yourself as a medium and living life as a medium and working in what has to do with mediumship. What is the most difficult thing for you about this life choice of yours?
Really, the most difficult thing has been learning on the go. What do I mean? I grew up in a world where I am 33 years old, folks. When I started with this, well, obviously, to work on it as such, I was already 18 years old. But when I was little, these things, at least in Venezuela, they weren't talked about. Esteban, this was a concept. This thing about Chico Xavier and Allan Kardec and all that, it was very, very, very closed off. It was very much about orders and things. Even though nowadays they want to portray it as if it was something everyone knew. No, not everyone was involved in that. Not everyone talked about it. Firstly, because Latin America has always been a very South America especially has been a very Catholic continent. So these topics of reading cards, astrology, were always in secret. Because they were taboo at the time. So obviously I didn't have anyone who could allow me to know that what I was seeing was normal. When I started reading books by James Van Praagh, John Holland, Lisa Williams, Tony Stockwell, all these famous mediums from the United States and Europe, because in Latin America there weren't these kinds of books on mediumship. There was Madame Blavatsky, but it was also something like Madame Blavatsky was for people who were followers of her teachings. So I had to literally grow up just watching the seers. By seers, I mean the people who read the cards. So I would say yes, but it doesn't. I don't receive information through cards. Mind you, I read the cards. People, I love them, but that was something I learned when I was older. Now, as a kid, that didn't happen to me. So, in some way, for me, the process of learning was complicated. As I was reading someone, information, symbols would come to me, identifying with someone, because something we talked about a while ago in the live session we had together was something that happened to me a lot. I mean, having to know that there were days when I was more connected than others, I had never thought about that. I mean, no one had ever told me that. I mean, with you, I really said, oh no, look, yes, we're not the same every day. I talked with John Holland. And I asked John Holland, for example, why are there spirits that communicate and others that don't? I mean, because there are souls that say, look, this is like this, like that, roasted. Because there are spirits that come to me and give me birth dates, place, everything, very, very specific details. And on other occasions, nothing. No, there are others where they tell me a pencil. And I'm like, and what is a pencil to you?
Then I have to start to
see, or it happens to you.
I imagine that suddenly you're in an experience and you don't perceive the spirit.
Well, I do large public demonstrations, and there's always a lot of people, and there are people who come to my events and get read, just as there are people who don't. And I'm talking about in an audience of I always say in an audience, for example, of 1,200, 2,000 people, not everyone gets read, because first, it's a 2-hour event, and secondly,
in that case, because of course, if you have a lot of people, there will always be someone to read. But I mean, when, for example, you're in front of someone who says, hey, could you do a session for me? And sometimes they come.
It happens to me, as sometimes that there are people. I just don't feel. But that's where I used to say, who do I ask this to? Me as a child, and then as an adult, already 18 and 19. And I would say, who do I ask this to? So learning on the go was the hardest part. And pay attention. I had to this, at least in Venezuela, there is a lot of skepticism. A lot. We are people. Venezuelans are very believers in God and everything. But what the media does in the United States, where people go to an event and to the second and the third and are never read, and people keep going because they like it, right? In Venezuela, people will go to 2 events, and by the third, they write to you on Instagram and say, I would like a private session because at the big events, you never read me, you know? And somehow, there are a lot of skeptics. So over there, you have to surprise people. So for example, I see other mediums, and it's not to denigrate anyone's work, but they say a couple of things. And people know. I had to make an effort. I had to read people live on television. There are mediums who don't agree to be read on television, but I had to do it live on TV. And sometimes, I also encountered bad people. So these are things that you start realizing that I had to learn. For example, to say no. Through learning on the go, I learned to say no. I don't want to reach you, or I don't feel anything, and I can't. And I shouldn't feel bad about that. I would have liked to know this 10, 12, 15 years ago. I would have really liked that.
Yes. I often told a medium friend who is more active in the field, I suggested to him for example, that there are things you shouldn't do because there are always people who might want to harm you, like, or because I know it's criticized because it's simple. So sometimes, as we were talking with a friend the other day, someone could, for example, have a private session with you and invite you to their house and set up cameras and make a spectacle out of you, let's say. Yes, and that can happen. That's why, for example, I never do sessions at anyone's house, because in the end, I prefer to have my space controlled, because those kinds of situations can always happen. Because in the end, to generate more ratings, they will look for some way to do something sensationalist. That's why I don't do sessions in public. Generally, I don't do them. And also because I have the conception that it's something very private. To avoid those kinds of problems, I always make limit it to just myself.
I learned that the hard way, but nowadays, also looking at the aspect of good souls and bad souls, I realized that you also come to release karmas. You come to free many people, because, well, that's when you realize that you have to learn that there will be all kinds of consciousnesses. I am truly proud, and I say this with all humility to everyone watching me, that my work has allowed many people to awaken their own gifts. It has allowed people to question a lot. I have doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, very mentally heavy people come to my sessions, who in the end are the ones who tell my team, I don't know how he did what he did, I don't know how he knew what he knew, but he left me with a doubt. He left me with a doubt, and that is enough for me, of course.
Well, we've been talking about Venezuela, about your beginnings in Venezuela and all that, but I understand, and if I'm not mistaken, that you decided to leave, pack your bags and go to Spain. As far as I know, you're in Spain. I don't know how much longer you'll be in Spain, whether it's indefinite or if you have a set period, and what drove you to pack your bags, go to Spain, and how is the experience in Spain? The Spaniards see it differently than Venezuelans, for example, with whom you are more closely connected.
Or is it very similar? Well, I really owe this trip to my job because, well, until a year ago, I was living in Argentina. I lived there for 5 years. I loved Argentina. I have family in Chile, so I also did presentations in Chile. I was in Colombia, I was in the Dominican Republic, and my job has made me travel a lot. But well, I always know that it's not me who moves, but the teachers and the divinity working through me. I was in Argentina, I was fine, I loved it, and one day I felt the need to move. And let's say there's a voice that sometimes tells me, I need you to do this and that. This was, grab your things and cross the sea, so to speak. And I arrived here in Spain. I really don't know how long I will be here because it's not something that I repeat, I decide. I didn't plan to stay in Argentina for long. The pandemic made me stay in Argentina. Because I arrived in Argentina, it was because I was going to do an event, and when the pandemic hit, they left me there. So obviously, I couldn't do anything to go against that. But I liked it a lot because Argentina allowed me to connect with the world, to reconnect with the spiritual part of myself that I had left behind. So I had left behind the crystals, Esteban, I had left behind Reiki, I had left behind everything related to coaching. In Argentina, it was like picking that up again. And as the pandemic was happening, I started studying. I took advantage of the pandemic to study, so I started studying ontological coaching, I started studying Reiki, biocoherence, coding, because that was what could be done at that time. You couldn't do much else. And that allowed me to be like, I always say Argentina was like a recharge for me. Coming here to Spain, I had already been coming to Spain for some time. I used to come almost every year. During the pandemic, I didn't come, but I used to come every year. Last year I came, this year I came. And the teachers last year told me, next year you will have a mission here. I arrived here, and it has been interesting because Europe as such people are very open to this holistic world, so to speak. I mean, here saying I am a medium is very common, and people take it very casually. I mean, okay, that's fine. Go ahead. Once I entered the royal palace here, and I saw Charles III, and Charles III was the one who told me, my room wasn't here, my room was further down. And I conveyed it to the guide, and the guide told me, yes, the stateroom is downstairs. We made a recreation here. You're a repeat visitor, aren't you? I told her, no, it's just that I'm a medium. And all she did was look at me, burst out laughing, and said, how nice. Send my regards to my grandmother. People take it very normally. Obviously, that makes what one might assume the opposite, that everything is a bit more magical, closer to Latin America. And in Europe, there's more structure. Everything is more rationalized. That's the impression one usually gets. So what you propose catches my attention. Yes, totally, because people are open to this holistic world. There are many people who are mediums, who read cards. There are few stores. For example, I often look for holistic stores. There are very few. So anyone who wants to open a holistic store, welcome. There's plenty of space for that here. But people take courses, attend workshops. There are mediumship congresses here, obviously based a lot on Allan Kardec in that structural world. There are many psychologists who are mediums that really surprised me, because one of the main opponents of my mediumship has been psychologists, because for them, they don't understand how a person in 1 hour of consultation does what they have to do in 50 sessions. But now, to find myself here with people saying, no, look, I am a psychologist and a medium. Wow, and how did you do that? But one keeps learning, and they are very open. The truth is, when you come, you will also like it a lot, because I know Esteban will come here. I know he will. And somehow you will like it a lot. I am asking those on the other side to insist more, like to push me a little. Those on the other side, invisible, but also those on the other side of the sea. Hey, we've talked about how beautiful, important, and significant mediumship is for you. But like everything, it has its good and bad sides, like everything. So, Bhagavan, I wanted to ask you, what do you see as the negative side of mediumship? Is there anything negative? Is there something you would say, this is the dark side, this is the side I don't like about mediumship? There are several things. The negative side is that you're exposed to everything. I really admire mediums who can close themselves off and say, I am not going to feel. Spirits don't bother me, and let me be clear. Spirits don't bother me. What bothers me is people's energy, their pain. I walk down the street and I feel their pain, their anger, their sadness. When I was young, now that I'm older, I realized that many of my emotional changes weren't because I was a teenager, but because I was being influenced by a lot of energy from the environment, but I didn't know it. Nowadays, sometimes I try not to touch people too much, not to touch objects too much, because I receive impressions from people. And maybe that's what I find most difficult, because being a medium means being exposed to all the energy. Do you learn to close yourself off? I don't know. I think you learn more to ignore rather than to close yourself off. What else don't I like about being a medium? The fact, at least in my case, that I, Bhagavan, don't have time to feel bad. I mean, I'm a person who is connected all the time. I don't know if it happens to you, but in my case, I have the answers all the time. So that thing of wanting to feel bad just because I want to feel bad out of whim, no. I mean, the masters are always telling me, the spirits are telling me all the time what's going on. You know that if you want to achieve this, you can achieve it. When something doesn't work out for me, they say, Beyawo, where is your vibrational level in that? So there are moments when I say, and I've told my team, there are moments when I say, I don't want to have the answers, or I don't want to stand up and say, I'm not experiencing this because of this. I want to be more unconscious. But sometimes I think they are whims of one's own. I think that mediocrity makes you realize that you're no longer at that level, that you're on another level, and that your work is like being in university and wanting to complain about elementary school things. You can't do that.
Sometimes it happens to me that before, when I started, I felt a bit like, of course, like spirits or guides would talk to you or guide you and such. But over the years, notice that I no longer feel the same way of connecting as at the beginning, but I still have the answers to my questions. I have my inner certainties, but I have the impression that it's oneself. At least I will speak for myself, that it's myself. That perhaps before it would have been more difficult to understand that I have the ability, because we are multidimensional, right? And there's a part of me that is much more advanced than the experience I'm living right now here that could communicate with myself. So, of course, that would originally it was easier for me to attribute it to a third party. But finally, I'm very open to the idea that one has the answer to everything. There's a deep inner certainty that makes me make decisions, act, understand life.
I mean, you can't complain much. It's like maybe. And sometimes, I don't know. For example, in love, I've experienced my relationships where my partners always find out that I'm a medium. And it's complicated because before, I used my gift to see what the person was doing. Nowadays, I say, it's like, well, you know that if you touch the person, or that's why I don't read my partners. I avoid reading my partners. And my partners always come and ask me, my current partner has said to me, why have you never told me anything? The other day, they told me, why have you never told me anything about what you see in me? I say, I don't need to. I don't want to enter your energy. I don't want to know what's inside that. I'd rather discover it.
The same thing happens to me with partners, and the same with relatives. I don't read my close relatives either. If you see something like, hey, a cousin, I want you to do a session for me. No, I refer you to a friend. I recommend this friend who doesn't know you, who has no blood ties with me. I don't know why, but I feel that way. Vagaban, I want to ask you the following question. Do you think mediums are born, or are mediums made? Can a medium be made from nothing?
The truth is, they are not made. Mediums are born. I used to have a lot of doubt, and it was one of my patients. I call them patient because I have a different concept of a patient. I had a patient who, a long time ago, told me that she was with me in a session, and there was a guy who was about to take a course on awakening your mediumship or becoming a medium, something like that. And I told her, you should take that course to learn how to develop your mediumship. And he turned to me and said, understand something, being a medium is not just about saying you're a medium. Being a medium requires validation of things, to know that you are a medium. Saying that I am a medium. Now, being intuitive is another thing. Being clairvoyant is another thing, but that was what she was telling me. But saying you are a medium, you don't learn that. It has to be born with you. So don't recommend that I go do something because I am not a medium. You taught me that I am intuitive. You allowed me to see that I am intuitive. But I don't feel spirits. I don't believe in spirits. And with you, I am learning that this exists. But no one should come here to tell them. Poor people who are going to be told that. So, of course, I obviously took it as a toxic comment, and I said, but over time and due to the experiences I have had meeting people with very high vibrations and very negative people, I realized that being a medium is something you're born with. You're born a medium because there will be things that a medium knows that a normal person will not know. Because obviously we've all had a relative pass away. We can all lose a father, mother, a brother, an uncle. But a real medium tells you things that only you and your loved one knew. And these are not things you would assume, because something I liked that you said in the live, it's true. People confuse reading the field with receiving a message. And reading the field, folks, means that we are all energy and we have an energy field. And there are people who are very good at reading the energy field. There are people who tell you, well, look, you have a conflict with your father, or there's someone here who died in an accident. But when you are a medium, the message comes more directly. It doesn't go around in circles as much. That's why, for me, a person is born a medium, not made into one, that you can develop. Intuition, yes, and that all of us at some point in our lives can serve as a bridge for God. Well, yes. But to really say, I am a medium, is heavy, because there will be things that if you don't know how to do them, not clearly.
And besides, dedicating oneself professionally, because I've seen people who take a course for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and after 2 months they are conducting mediumship courses and offering medium services.
And the same, exactly.
And it's complex.
And another thing that I don't know about you, Esteban, but for me, being a medium is constant 24/7. And I see that all these people who take a course are like, oh, well, I pay for it. And when I want, I say it's like when I take out the cards, poker cards, and we're going to play poker. Well, I'm a medium, I feel that a medium is really constant. And among the bad things, also that you wanted me to talk about earlier. Well, I think one of the negative things I see in humanity is that when people find out you're a medium, they don't stop asking questions. So you never stop working. You never stop doing this. And there are moments when sometimes you say, I just want to go to bed and sleep. I went to one place in the history of my life where I didn't feel anything, where it's a place. It's called Angel Falls. And it was the only place I've been where I didn't feel any spirit. And it was impressive because every time I wanted to feel something, it was like something was returning what I was trying to feel and made me feel myself. And that seemed so impactful to me because it was truly the only place where I could be normal, where it didn't matter who I was with, but otherwise the medium is connected all the time. So those people who take a course and then give courses, and not only that, but they turn it off like a radio. Wow, how incredible. I love it. To me, you are an intuitive person who learned certain mediumship techniques that allow you to pick up things from the field, but actually talking to a spirit is kind of complicated. Exactly.
I totally agree with you. Well, good. And since we've talked about the beyond, about the death of mediumship, projecting into the future, and I hope for many more years. I mean, how would you like your death to be? How would you like the transition from leaving this existence here to moving on to the beyond to be?
Well, I'm going to die, I was told. At what age am I going to die? I don't know. When I'm going to have a first pre-heart attack at the age I'm going to have the pre-heart attack, and years later I die. I will be at home. I know I will be at home and I will be dressed in a specific way. But well, I always think about it because, let's say, being constantly connected with the beyond, you start seeing the scenarios where you might go, right? I know I will never die in an accident. I know I won't be in an attack or die in an attack or anything like that. But I know it will be peaceful. And let's say I've already organized it. I already know it. And well, let's say I'm at peace with it.
Doesn't it bother you to know that?
You're going through.
The years and the day and hour are getting closer and the countdown is active. Obviously, we all know that we have an active countdown, but for me, it's a blur. It could be next year, it could be in 40 more years. I don't know. But if I had a more defined moment, maybe I would have made perhaps very radical changes in my life. You see?
Well, sometimes I think about what I've seen or what they've shown me. It's how I want to leave people. I mean, obviously all my friends, all the people I know. I already know that I know who will have already left and who won't by that time. being in the middle has given me the opportunity to know those kinds of things. And let's say that every time I look forward and see the day passing, the year passing, and those years getting closer in a long time, well, I try to live as calmly as possible. It's just that I'm not afraid of death anymore, or it's like, I know it will come. That's why when I've been in turbulence, for example, some time ago, I was with my team on a plane and the plane started moving, but in such a way that people, if you see me on a plane, I'm super calm. It's moving like that and I'm sleeping. Just so you know, gentlemen, traveling with me on a plane means I fall asleep. I mean, I don't feel turbulence. You can ask someone from my team, at least like Lino, who tells me, but how do you sleep? But you don't feel the turbulence, people screaming. I don't. First, because I already know I'm not going to die in a plane. I know I'm not going to have an air accident. So since I know it, no, I don't worry, no.
I try to live.
I try to live without anger, you know? I try to live without anger. My annoyances last 5 minutes.
It would be strange as a medium that we would be afraid of death. I mean, I imagine there must be mediums who are afraid of death, but honestly, no, it doesn't really make sense to me. Hey, they will see. And to wrap up, how do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? Because since you said that apparently the date you have clear and for your departure is many years from now, I suppose it will be more than 5 or 10 years from now. How do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? What do they do about Bhagavan Vásquez?
Well, I can tell you that starting next year, things are going to happen to me that I'm not sure I'm ready to experience. EM, because it has a lot to do with being more public. EM, maybe. Delivering a message to the whole world, but on a larger scale. Hey, I've seen myself well, I've seen myself calm. So, hey, I try to take care of my health because I know that, in a couple of years, in 10 years, I might have certain health issues related to diet and those kinds of things, which nowadays, just yesterday I was saying, oh, but if they told me this, why do I keep eating like this? But I see myself well and I see myself helping many people with a holistic center as such, because that has been my dream, to have a holistic center where I can help other people. There are people who have told me that if I want to teach I don't know if I've never felt capable of teaching something, maybe giving more talks, maybe traveling the world, spreading the conference more. I have several conferences. One is called Between Two Worlds, which is a very beautiful conference because I try to get people to change their view of death, to understand that death will be there, that it will hurt, that you will cry, but that you can decide whether to sink into depression or take it as part of life, right? And that has allowed me to take this conference around the world. I have one called an Afternoon of Spirits where I speak in a very small group, 50, 60 people minimum. In some way, that allows me, I see myself like that, doing those events, making a living from them, from teaching, from imparting knowledge, but calmly, really not. As I tell you, I live in the now, very much in the now, because I have also learned that sometimes looking too far ahead distracts you from the present, and many important things are happening here as well.
Exactly. Bhagavan, then, we wish you a lot of success in the future from here. Thank you very much for sharing with us here, and you are a cordial guest for a future interview. Thank you very much, Bhagavan.
No, thank you. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you here in Spain, so you know.
Okay, a hug, Bhagavan. Thank you for attending this interview with Bhagavan. And if you like this video, it wouldn't hurt to ask you to give it a like. Your comments are always welcome. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe so we can reach many more people with these topics. I hope to see you soon in the next episode. See you soon.